Today on Showcaine, episode 81, we're talking to Neil Gardner, an ex-member of the Jehovah's Witness cult. And up until yesterday, I just believed to be just a really kooky, kind of extreme-y religion. Did not know, got in touch with this guy through Reddit, and did a little bit of my own research. Found out it's a pretty creepy organization. So stick around. We'll be right back with Neil, and I hope you enjoy this episode of Showcaine. Hello out there, and welcome to Showcaine. My name is Matt Baca. It's been a while since we've talked, guys, out there in internet land. I missed you. Today's going to be a good one. I'm really excited. Man, it was a lot of times, you know, we get to interview people and it's cool or whatever, and I do a little research in the background just to make sure I don't sound like an idiot when we talk. And this one was like one of those things where you just get lost on Wikipedia, just like, oh man, and then what happens? And it was real crazy doing the research, so I'm really looking forward to this conversation. And just in the back and forth I've had already with today's guest, seems like a cool guy and very knowledgeable on the topic. So get ready for it. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce my guest today is Neil Gardner, an ex-member of the Jehovah's Witness cult. And when I first did some research on this, or before I even knew anything about it, I was like, oh my gosh, this is cool, but it's kind of like the Diet Coke of cults. It's not that big of a deal. But then the more I looked into it, the more disturbing and crazy it got. And so, like I said, without further ado, how are you?
Well, not too bad, thanks, Matt. How are you?
I'm good. I'm real good. I haven't joined a cult today. Everything's good.
Nice. It's always a good day when you haven't joined a cult.
Yes. So tell me, you were with the Jehovah's Witness, and how did you get started? How did you get wrapped up into this?
Yep. I kind of think of the Jehovah's Witnesses, like you said, it's like a Diet Coke. They're a cult hiding in plain sight. I was born and raised in the Jehovah's Witnesses. My parents got involved in about 1971. I'm 40 now. And I was born 74. They were brought in during the recruitment campaign because back then the Jehovah's Witnesses had predicted that the world was ending in 1975, so you better get your skates on.
Yeah.
Their belief, although they're very nice when they come to your door, is that unless you're one of Jehovah's Witnesses, that you're all going to die at God's judgment day, which is any day now. They've been planning it, and they've been predicting it for about 130 years. But pretty much the attitude when you're a Jehovah's Witness, and it still kind of shocks me that, you know, you fall for it, but you do, is that, you know, it could be tomorrow.
Well, how do they recover from, like, let's say a missed prediction? And I know that I know their plan is now, like, it's any day now, it's just imminent. But back in the day, like you said, it was like, it's going to be this day, or it's going to be that day.
Well, actually, that's a really good question. I've thought about that, and although I haven't seen much, you know, any kind of studies on it, my opinion is that the Jehovah's Witnesses don't care about their members. The actual leadership doesn't care about its members. It cares about its numbers, which is a different thing. It's a bit like saying the army cares about being a big army. Well, of course it does. But if it loses several soldiers, well, that's a tragedy. But so long as it gets several more, it's still a big army.
Well,
so lots of people left. You know,
I think it's 67% of children leave by the age of 18.
Yeah, that's mostly of Western nations, sort of, and particularly English speaking. They've got better results in Spanish speaking in Africa. They're quite big in, you know, in countries, ironically, countries that ban them, they tend to be quite successful in, because maybe it's the mystery thing, you know?
Sure, yeah. Well, now it's my understanding that in this culture, dating is, you know, that's tough, and we'll get to all that kind of stuff. But how does a religion or cult that is trying to perpetuate in numbers really benefit from, you know, I don't know, like just from banning sex and from banning promiscuity? And like, because usually I know that that, you know, marriage and college and all these things are things that you shouldn't do, but that if you're trying to boost your numbers.
Well, I suppose it's a bit of a hypocritical system. They say you shouldn't get married, but then they read scriptures, which, I mean, are in the New Testament, which speak about, well, you know, if you can't control yourself, go get yourself a woman. which is a really great basis for a happy, long-lived relationship. That you're getting married because you need to have sex, but they do accept that people are going to have sex, and they're very big into raising your kids as witnesses, and that's very much a part of their don't go on to further education, don't expand your mind. They're okay with you. Say you want to take after Jesus and become a carpenter. That's okay, but a plumber or something like that, where it's a manual thing, that you've learned skills. But if you were a Jehovah's Witness, like say today, and you said, well, do you know what, Mom and Dad, I'm going to go and do a philosophy degree. Oh no, you're not.
Wow.
No, not if you want to live in the same house. You're not.
So let's talk about like some of the misconceptions, and especially I mean, just in preparation for this interview, I learned a lot. But before, like yesterday, I would say that I was probably almost on the same page of a lot of people, thinking that Jehovah's Witness was just kind of like a little extreme-y, kind of really religious-y Christian group that just went door to door and bothered you, and that was the extent of my knowledge of this group until then. And can you expand on like what some of the misconceptions are with Jehovah's Witness?
People, obviously you're most noticed as a Jehovah's Witness because you were the people who call around your door.
Yeah.
I still say, see, that's how bad a cult it is. I'm out of the Jehovah's Witnesses 15 years, and I still say we.
Sure.
Even though as far as they shun me, they cross the road to avoid me now. But I'm sure we'll get to that though. The Jehovah's Witnesses, you see them as the people who call at your door, and you maybe have heard that they don't take blood transfusions.
Medical, I heard I heard that's like, I don't know, you have to get approval.
Some people mix them up with Christian Scientists who also have real problems with medicine, but they're just anti-blood. But no, it's fascinating. The reality, of course, is much different. What the Jehovah's Witnesses actually are is an organization that seeks to control virtually every aspect about you. Now, it's easy to be in a cult when you're born into a cult because, when I was a kid, I believed that speaking to you like this would, I'd be committing a sin against the Holy Spirit, and I would be unlikely to even ever be forgivable,
Wow.
Because that's how I was raised. And my mom and dad were pretty straight people. They were nice people. They're still with me, and they're nice people. But that's what you grow up around. When I was a kid growing up, we were taught of the imminency of Armageddon. Now, all churches believe that someday. I'm agnostic now, so I don't care what people believe personally. It's not my business.
Sure.
But all churches believe that there's, that God's coming to judge at one point, and that's fine. But when you take that belief and you say, well, Matt, really, should you be doing a radio show? Because what you should be doing is getting out and teaching people about the end of times.
Wow.
Should you be getting an education? I was taught, and the Jehovah's Witnesses, they beat this stuff into you. There's a video that you can see on YouTube at the moment, one of their leaders talking at an assembly, children there, and he's talking about when come Armageddon and how there's going to be the bloated and bloodied and bursted skulls of, the dead at Armageddon.
And this is just a kid talking.
Yeah, well, this is one of the members of the governing body, but he's actually speaking to people with children in the room.
Oh boy.
And this is the kind of life that you lead as a witness. I remember when I was a kid growing up, I was brought up in the time of the Cold War, and we were taught about how every meeting we were talked about the doomsday clock, and it had been moved by the Swiss people who are in charge of it. We were talking 1 second closer to the end of the day because this fitted in with their nonsense. We were also taught as Jehovah's Witness kids, given examples about how back in the days of the Nazis, Jehovah's Witness parents had their kids taken off them. Because they weren't, they were pacifist in the sense of not joining the army. And I remember, I talked to my mom and dad about this recently, actually. And I remember as a kid, probably 7 years old, I'm staring up, I'm looking at my dad, I'm holding his hand. And I remember my experiences as a child were looking at my dad and going, Dad, what's going to happen when they come to take us away from you?
Wow.
So my kids wake up and they say, Dad, you taking me to the park today? I was either going on the ministry or I was worrying about my parents being being imprisoned and me being sent to a group home where I'd be taught by worldly people.
Well, let's talk about your parents there then. Like, what are they still in the organization?
No, I'm proud to say they're not.
That's good.
What happened? I don't want to jump ahead too far, but what happened is when I turned about 25, I was obviously a slow learner because when I was 25, I finally moved out of home. And I also got the internet, which at the time was only dial-up. So 15 years ago was dial-up internet.
Oh, I remember.
Yeah, it was great. And, you heard that little buzzing noise. And, that was brilliant. I got the internet, happy days. And
Well,
anyway,
when I was logging onto that internet, I certainly wasn't looking up Jehovah.
oh, well, I was. Trust me. And I found a fantastic site, which is now gone, called H2O. And and this is the case with many people who leave Jehovah's Witnesses. I'm telling you now, here now, I was not looking to leave the Witnesses. I was a true believer. We've obviously, it's okay for me to tell your viewers or your listeners that you saw me through the Reddit thing I did about I was in a cult.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, and somebody asked me on one of those questions. They said, what made you leave? And I said to them, I'd love to tell you that it was because I was just so damn smart and that I could see through all their lies. But none of that would be true. I was completely fooled by it. And when I went online, the first thing I went in was to type Jehovah's Witnesses, maybe because I was a little bit rebellious, but I was so angry when I saw what people were writing about us. I was just so, I was thinking, how could you do that? I remember my first comment online ever was like, I was actually to a guy who called himself Farkle, who I've spoken to relatives of his now, who's now passed on. And I remember saying, how dare you say things like this? We're right on blood transfusions. Jehovah's Witnesses are right. Why would you do this? I mean, those people, they've been on a little longer than me, and they were like, is this guy a troll? And they ended up putting me in the direction of, various books that have been written by ex-Jehovah's Witnesses, telling me some things themselves. And the scales fell from my eyes, and, that was it.
Well, what was it? What was it exactly where you were like, you know what? Something is pretty weird here. This doesn't make any sense.
If you're a Jehovah's Witness, you'll always have questions. And one of the big things that even before I knew that they were wrong is that you can't question. I mean, let's say you're a Jehovah's Witness and I'm a Jehovah's Witness elder, which is like the senior guys in the hall. There's about maybe between 5 and 7 of them.
Well, at this point, I'm already tipped off. If I'm in a group where there's something called an elder, I'm like, wait a minute, this.
You should run.
Hey, man.
Wise. Well, let's say you're not. Let's say you're an idiot like me. Okay?
Sure.
And what you did is you said to them, listen, I have a real problem with the Jehovah's Witness teaching that God came back or that Jesus Christ came back to earth invisibly around about the turn of the 1900s. And he chose the Jehovah's Witnesses, then called the Bible students, as his only representatives on earth. I'm a little bit confused about that. And I'm also confused about the method you get for the dating of that, because they do have a dating method. Now, you'll get told it once or twice, and you see if you don't agree after that point. Well, now you're starting to look a bit rebellious, man. And now we're going to have a conversation about whether you've got apostate thinking.
Well, what do they tell you in the first place? Just a bunch of like mumbo jumbo about how you should just read more and don't even think about it?
They say, really what you needed to do is read more of the Watchtower Week, read the publications.
Well, I know you guys study everything, and it takes up a lot of your time, especially as a kid, to do all these things. So, go ahead.
Sorry, they've got rid of the Tuesday night book study now, but when I was in it, there was the Tuesday night book study. That was about 2.5 hours of your evening. Bear in mind, this is, young kids. Young kids. I mean, I've got a 4-year-old downstairs running around ruining the house. And, he would be out wearing his little shirt and tie, expected to sit quietly. If he didn't, let me tell you, physical abuse in the Jehovah's Witnesses is a huge issue.
Really?
Children will be taken out into that back room and they will be beaten senseless.
Oh, wow.
In my, it was the case in my congregation. It's the case in most congregations. And, all you need to do is go on the ex-Jehovah's Witness forums, and the stories are all the same. But, sorry, I lost my train of thought. Where were we there?
Well, what I was going to ask is that you have all this, you studied all this, you read all this, you've done all this for years, and you're so knowledgeable about all these things that are now technically, I mean, to your current belief structure, just moot points. They don't matter anymore. So how does that feel to have all this knowledge about something that really doesn't apply to you anymore?
I think, it's weird. I mean, I know a great deal about why 1914 is an important date for the Jehovah's Witnesses. And I know that, the Jehovah's Witness policy on blood transfusion, and I look back on it, with some degree of bitterness. I mean, when you were in school and you were making friends, I was being taught that what I had to do when I went to school was to bring in brochures and try to convert you to Jehovah's Witnesses.
Oh, boy.
So, as you can imagine, I had a bunch of friends.
Yeah. Well, that's a good question, actually. So when you're going door to door, whatever that's called, You knock on the door and it's your buddy from school that recognizes you. What is that like in your head, and what's going to happen at school the next day?
Oh, it's the worst thing ever. I mean, it's the worst thing ever. You're so obviously, kids live to fit in. There's that one oddball kid who just doesn't care what other people think about him, but I wasn't that kid. Kids want to fit in. They don't want to be picked on.
Of course.
They just want to get on. And this is one of the things that is the sort of the psychological abuse of Jehovah's Witnesses, that when you're in, you don't really realize. But I mean, even the simple things like saying, I don't celebrate birthdays. Well, okay, you don't celebrate birthdays, but what does that entail? Well, it entails that I'm not buying you a birthday present, Matt. Right? So you're not inviting me to any birthday parties ever. Right?
Oh, well, are you allowed to go to a birthday party?
You're not.
Okay. So
in my life, I've been to one birthday party.
Yeah.
And I had my first birthday party when I was 30 years old.
Oh, geez. Did it really? Do you think it would be or feel different? This is a pretty easy question, I would assume. But do you think it would feel different if you had birthdays as a child, or was your first 30th birthday pretty awesome?
It was pretty awesome, and it was my now wife who arranged. It was my then girlfriend, now wife, who arranged it for me. But I mean, it was awesome. It was. But at the same time, I'd be lying if I didn't say that you kind of fake a lot of it now, because if I, like, it's like you, right? I don't know what particular holidays you follow, but if I said to you tomorrow, right, we're going to go celebrate Kwanzaa.
Sure.
Well, you might, smile and say, okay, can I have a beer in Kwanzaa? Is that okay?
Yeah, that's exactly what I would say, actually.
I mean,
yeah.
But you wouldn't, you're not going to feel it. You're not going to feel it like, oh, I remember when I was a kid and I opened my Kwanzaa presents, and Dad got the Christmas or the Kwanzaa tree down or whatever it is we have. You wouldn't have those feelings in your heart.
Yeah, wow, that's too bad.
So we don't. Christmas is kind of like, yeah, kids, Christmas is awesome. Tooth Fairy, the kids are like, oh, Dad, I lost a tooth, and I'm like, yeah, okay, get me the wallet, whatever, But you try to fake it because you love your kids.
Of course, yeah. Of course, man. That's got to be rough, though. That's too bad.
It is kind of crap, and the most important thing is, as I said before, is it's the Jehovah's Witnesses are all about self-isolation. So you might know a Jehovah's Witness, but
well, this is I live in Brooklyn, and I think their headquarters is here.
Oh, down the road.
Yeah.
But and the interesting thing about Brooklyn is I was always taught to believe that was the center of spirituality for the whole world.
I can tell you that it's not.
No, exactly.
I can tell you firsthand that this is definitely not the center of spirituality.
And it was only years later when I left the Witnesses, I spoke to someone who was involved, who had met one of the people from there, one of the leaders, and he actually said to me, listen, he says, I was told that they actually said to me, name a crime that you can think of, and it's all happened in Brooklyn. There's been rapes, there's been murders in their Bethel.
I committed a crime right before this interview.
I'm not just talking about the city. I'm talking about their actual headquarters. They've had every crime committed within their own walls.
I'm sure they have. Usually with this much power comes a lot of, anything. Even with like other less culty religious organizations, there's always some kind of kitty touching going on or something.
Yeah, I was getting carried away. Jehovah's Witnesses are all about self-isolation, and that's why they don't. They can say we don't celebrate birthdays, but if you actually ask them to prove why, they can't, because there is no there is no verse in the Bible which says you shouldn't celebrate birthdays. They just infer it from other things. Why they shouldn't celebrate Christmas, again, they infer that. But the reason is truthfully is to self-isolate. It's so that I'm not like you, and you don't understand me, and that I can't and that we can't bridge the gap, and that I'll always be stuck in my cult.
Wow.
That's all it is. It's the same control methods that the Scientologists use. Less so the Mormons, who are a little bit easier going, but not a great deal. And it's those same cult tactics have been going on for a long time, unfortunatately.
Very so you would say just a lot of guilt, just a lot of self-hate and guilt, and don't jerk off.
You can never live up to what you're expected. You can, and you're constantly reminded of it. It doesn't matter what you do. I was actually writing something for a little website which is starting up called jwstories.com, and I was writing them about our story, and I was trying to say, as Jehovah's Witnesses, my family, we were sincere. If there's any Jehovah's Witnesses listening to this, they'll probably have turned off because Jehovah's Witnesses aren't allowed to listen to me.
Sure.
They're forbidden, which, is also, by the way, a good indicator that you're in a cult, if you're forbidden from listening to other people.
Yeah.
but we were sincere, you know. I mean, my sister, when she was 12, she was hit by a car going 60 miles an hour, and obviously it nearly killed her. She was only a young girl, and you know, she was in hospital on and off for 2 years. She was critically ill for many, many months, and during that time, my parents were pressured, given huge amounts of pressure, quite rightly, to give her a blood transfusion, and they refused.
Oh no.
Because they were willing to let her die because that was their belief that, you know, God didn't want her to have a blood transfusion. So, you know, and here's the kicker, is that so she recovered, you know, it took her about 2 years.
Without the blood transfusion?
She recovered, she did recover. Well, there was some iffiness regarding the blood transfusion, that later on she may have had one, but we don't know.
Okay.
But here's the funniest thing, is that when my sister turned 17, she got disfellowshipped anyway. And because she had made it clear to the elders in the hall that despite the fact that she was disfellowshipped, that she had no intention of returning, they then went to my parents and ordered my parents to kick her out of the house.
Or else they would be kicked out.
Or else they would be kicked out.
Oh boy, and how did that go?
Well, my mom and dad were devout, and they kicked her out, and I didn't speak to my sister again for 13 years.
Ugh. So you were on the same page at that time. You were still, I guess.
Oh yeah, totally dedicated. You know.
Yeah.
I mean, the best part of it is that 13 years later, nearly a year after I'd first moved out of my mom and dad's house, she was in the process of getting divorced from a guy that was really a horrible guy. She had 4 kids, and she was, you know, very, very in bad way. Because he was a very abusive guy. And because I was now an apostate who'd left the Jehovah's Witnesses, I contacted my sister and said, hey, move in with me. So she came back. She lives down the road from me now. We have a great relationship. She has, you know, I have 3 nieces and 1 nephew.
That's just so, it's just so hard to understand, like how, I mean, you know, you're obviously so indoctrinated into this thing, and that's nobody's fault. I don't think it takes a weak mind. I mean, anybody with the right tactics, and these people obviously know the right ones, can succumb to this kind of thing. But it's just so interesting that you were so one way, and now you're so the other. I think so. I mean, I try to rationalize it, or at least I've tried. And what I say is, what I am now, there's sort of different grades of people who leave the Witnesses, and they have different standards of what Jehovah's Witnesses then think about them. So if you leave the Jehovah's Witnesses just because, let's say, you want to, you know, do drugs and have sex, sure,
that's considered, you know, very bad. But it's kind of a human thing, you know. Humans do this. Well, you know, maybe you'll come back, and they might even, you know, nod their head at you on the street, or maybe talk to you. The parents will certainly probably, you know, have a sneaky speak to you once in a while. But then there's people like me who leave because we don't believe it anymore. And if you shut your mouth and you never say anything, they'll leave you alone. But if you ever say a word, they will hound you down. They will call you before committee meetings. They will have you disfellowship. Every person that you know that you ever grew up with, that you ever called a friend, people that you call brother and sister, uncle and auntie, you know, even though they were that close kind of friends.
Yeah.
They'll all stop speaking to you, and they all have me. You know.
And do they still, like, I don't, how long have you been out now?
Yeah, I've been out 14, 15 years now.
So 15 years, is there still any kind of harassment coming from them?
Yeah.
Really?
I saw them today. So, I mean, I live in a fairly small town, which has just become a city about a year ago. But, you know, we have like one main street, and they're out there with those information carts. And when they see me now, because they know that I do, you know, they call me an apostate, which is someone who leaves their old beliefs. And by that standard, we're all apostates because, you know, we all believe something, and I realize it's silly. Excuse me. But if they see me coming now, they pack up their bags and they run away.
Wow. But they don't actively, like, you know.
Do they do stuff to you? No. Okay. They just shun you.
Okay. Well, I could deal with that.
I'm coping these days.
Yeah.
The difficulty is, I coped, right? I was lucky. I was self-employed when I left the Jehovah's Witnesses. I had a business to concentrate on. You know, I had a girlfriend who was never involved in them, who later became my wife. So I had stuff outside it. But there's a lot of Jehovah's Witnesses who leave. Let's say you leave because you're gay. Jehovah's Witnesses don't like homosexuality. They don't tolerate it. Okay. Right. So you're a Jehovah's Witness. You're gay. You're out. Bye-bye. And now your mom and dad say, listen, son, get out of the house. So now, okay, who do you go to? Do you go to your friends? No, because they're all Jehovah's Witnesses.
Wow, so you essentially you wind up homeless and no job, no prospects, and you just kind of have to come crawling back to the church.
Well, and if you don't, and if it's the case of something like homosexuality, where they know you're not changing,
Yeah.
if it's that case, and it's really sad to say, but there's plenty of documented cases. You can go on YouTube and look at a YouTube channel called JW Struggle, where he's talking to several people who ended up homeless, who ended up drug addicts, who ended up, and then other people where he talks about people who ended up committing suicide. There's plenty of documented cases where people ended up taking their lives.
Wow.
And I can tell you, when I left the Jehovah's Witnesses, despite the help that I had some really low times.
I'm sure you did. Yeah, it can't be an easy process. Just what a topsy-turvy way to look at life. Like now everything in your life is just the other way around.
Exactly. And you remember that even though I realized it was wrong, you can't undo 25 years of indoctrination just because you read a book.
Sure. And I bet you probably still have a lot of guilt issues.
You do have guilt issues. I mean, Jehovah's Witnesses are everything. You're trained to go to the elders about everything, but you're also trained that there's no such thing as secrets, really. So, for instance, your listeners would probably like the discussion of the oddness of Jehovah's Witnesses and sex. So, it's a good example. Jehovah's Witnesses have lots of prohibitions on sex that types they approve of, types they don't approve of, even within marriage. Okay.
Oh, that's weird.
Oh, it is, yeah. So let's say oral sex, they don't like that. Okay, but here's
do.
It's not the worst, but here's the thing, right? If you're a Jehovah's Witness husband, Matt, and I don't know if you're married, but let's say your wife's a Jehovah's Witness wife, and you guys succumb to the temptation, what happens is that now there's an arms race for which one of you kills on each other first.
Oh, what? No way.
Yeah, because if you get guilty and then tell the elders, and she hasn't, well, that shows what? That she's hiding it. She's not guilty. So not only have she committed a sin, but she's hid the sin, and she's guilty, and she's not guilty of the sin. You know what that means? Your wife's getting disfellowship, Matt.
Oh boy.
And vice versa for you. So there's now an arms race as to which one of you tells on each other first.
And does that carry over into just basically anything as well? Like even if it's something not as fun as oral sex, like you just have to tell on people. That's the culture.
And the thing is, I try not to be. We have a word for it over in Ireland. It's called a tout. I don't know, a snitch in America.
A snitch, sure, yeah, snitch works.
Yeah, snitch. So it's very difficult because you spent 25 years of your life being trained to be a snitch. And then, you go into, well, I'm saying the world, but the Jehovah's Witnesses view the world very, very negatively, as if, it's the whole world. They use the scripture in the Bible. The whole world is lying in the power of the wicked one. So they think everybody, this radio station, the internet, the governments, the schools, the churches, everything is all part of Satan's empire of false religion. Excuse me. So whenever you go out into the world, that's what you're in. So even though I knew the witnesses were rubbish, I was still looking for something that was right, but I was in the world. So who do you trust? And
what does that? Okay, so when you were in, Jehovah is God, essentially. Yes.
They use like the Aramaic name for God. It's not correct to their name for it, but it's as near as damn it, so no one really argues with it.
Well, let me ask you this. So what fills that void for you today? Like, who is Jehovah to you today, if there is so, or if there's not, what fills that void for you?
Right. Well, that's another good question. This is fun. I had, when I left the Jehovah's Witness, like I say, I was looking for, the right teaching. And that's one of the things Jehovah's Witnesses have to feel. They have to feel that they know the answer to everything. Now, of course, the truth is Jehovah's Witnesses don't get good educations, so they're incredibly ignorant of almost everything. But they have to feel that they know things. So, excuse me. So if they go on to a subject that they don't know a great deal about, they're very nervous. But when I left the Jehovah's Witnesses, I had this burning, desire. I need to know what's true, what's right. And amazingly, the first people who ever spoke to me after I was officially out were Mormons.
Oh, wow.
They spoke to me for like 2 months, and I remember thinking, I don't know about these gold tablets. I'm not.
It's kind of similar. It's kind of similar.
They come from a similar time, though, don't they? In America's past.
Yeah.
And what I finally thought is to myself is, you know what, Neil? I thought I'm gonna have to look into them with the same critical thought that blew up my own religion, because otherwise, I'm not being honest. So of course I looked into the Mormons for all of 3 seconds.
Yeah.
Discovered discovered that the Mormon Church is nonsense on stilts, just like the Jehovah's Witnesses, and that was the end of that. And then I flirted with the sort of happy clappy evangelical churches for a while.
Oh no.
Yeah, well, sort of nice evangelical, not Westboro Baptist evangelical, but
Okay.
sort of nice. We play nice music on the Sunday, and how great thou art. It's a kind of a catchy song. So I went to those for a while, and now I've sort of degenerated into a mushy agnostic. I'm happy enough if God exists. That'd be nice.
Sure.
I don't really want to argue with you if you're convinced that he doesn't. Although I like, Christopher Hitchens, I think gave me a good grounding in atheism, which I'm grateful for, as did Richard Dawkins. But I'm not gonna lose much sleep. And I kind of think that, although I enjoy talks about philosophy and about our origins, I think it's maybe more important to talk about family and love and all those essential immediate things.
Yeah, the here and now.
Yeah, because if we all die tomorrow and wake up in some hereafter, I would like to think that if there was a God, which I'm by no means certain of, that he would say, "Hey, Neil, you had a really crappy time. I can totally understand you being messed up."
Yeah, sure. No, of course. So would you say that maybe almost your quest for knowledge is kind of has helped a lot? Like, when you learn something new, does that take something bad away?
Yeah, I think, well, one thing I would always be very grateful to my parents for is my parents were very big into reading. Jehovah's Witnesses, ironically, are not big into reading. One of the things, they don't teach you this they don't tell you this when you go around the doors, but one of the things that we were taught as kids growing up is you can pretty much get everything you need from the Jehovah's Witness magazines and publications. You don't really need anything else.
Oh man, and what is it? Did those come out? I would assume like weekly or maybe even daily.
Every 2 weeks.
Oh wow.
So, and bear in mind now, there's two magazines: the Watchtower, which is a very bad and very scary, religious tract, which is full of end of the world stuff, and very boring, stories about the Old Testament. Because the Jehovah's Witnesses, although they don't really realize it, they really love the Old Testament. Anybody who goes to a Kingdom Hall, which is what they call their churches, and realizes that they don't mention Jesus a lot because they're a pretty Old Testament bunch. But that's what their Watchtower is. And then their Awake magazine is really sort of a really bad, cheap rehash of the Reader's Digest.
Oh, that sounds interesting.
Yeah, I mean, Reader's Digest is full of, it's the kind of thing, if you're stuck on a plane and the Reader's Digest is beside you, you're not sad.
I don't know. Maybe I still would be. I think I'd rather just look at the puke bag for 2 hours than read a Reader's Digest.
I like it. There's lots of little bits in it. But that's what they try to do. Basically, they try to do the same thing as the Reader's Digest. Lots of little stories and interesting articles. But it's always slanted towards a religious thing, So they did an article recently. I occasionally, will stop their stands and have a read of them for old time's sake. They did an article recently on DNA. But it was all sort of, aiming towards, isn't it amazing that God created this? And you're kind of like, yeah, okay.
Do you ever get feelings of like, I don't know, maybe, you know what? Maybe I should go back to that.
Oh God, no. I'm really lucky in one sense because hopefully I'm not that stupid. But I know people who do. But what I would say is that because of what I've done, their worst sinner is a person who, I'm going to tell you a good story about this. Their worst sinner is what's called a person who sins against the Holy Spirit, right? And that's a person basically who's an apostate, who leaves and then speaks against them. So,
okay.
I mentioned to you, I do videos on a YouTube channel called The Great Apostate. So I've kind of hung my heart on my sleeve, and they know this. So, not only would I never want to return, but the prospects of them accepting me would be very, very slim.
Wow, yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah. I've got one. If I can tell you a good example, by the way, of how Jehovah's Witness they have a pecking order.
Sure.
Whenever I was a Jehovah's Witness and I had just left, there was a guy in my Kingdom Hall, as I told you, that's their church. And I'll not tell you his name, but I'm pretty sure he's dead now, so it doesn't really matter. But he had moved back from either Canada or America, and he'd spent a considerable period of time of his life in prison there because he was a paedophile. And he had gone, and he came back, and because this was his country, once he got out of prison, they said, right, get out of our country. And but he was still a Jehovah's Witness, so he came to our Kingdom Hall. And by this point, he was like 75 years old, and no danger to anybody, really, at least hopefully. But anyway, I was driving on the road. I just left the witnesses about a year maybe, and it was pouring rain, like really, just torrential. And I saw this old guy walking down the road, and I was driving down and I thought, you know what? I know, I don't like him, but the guy's going to die in the rain. It's So I pulled in and I shouted to him, hey, come on, jump in the car.
So you had a pedophile get in your van?
I did, because, I'm an idiot. But anyway, I just felt bad for him. He's a human being after all.
Who doesn't feel bad for pedophiles?
So yeah, okay. But anyway, so I said to him, get in the car, I'll drive to your house, because I knew he was only up the road. And he jumped in the car, so grateful, and he started saying to me, oh, Stephen, thank you so much, Stephen. And I said to him, no, mate, you're mistaking me. I'm Neil. That's my brother, because he looks a bit like me. I said, okay, that's my brother you're thinking of, who at this time was still a Jehovah's Witness. And once he realized, he looked at me and he said, stop the car. And he got out of the car and walked back off in the rain.
Wow, he'd rather walk in the rain and think about kids than ride in the dry with you. Wow, that's conviction. Let me ask you this. What questions did you find yourself having once you got out? Maybe not immediately, because I'm sure there was a big flood, but like just over and over the years, what comes up the most as questions you have for people who were never involved in the church or any cult for that matter? What do you find yourself asking people the most for people who had what is, and I don't mean to be pejorative, but like a normal-er type of life? What questions do you see yourself asking them most often?
I suppose, and this is just from my perspective, I still find it very difficult to deal with normal people. Again, not being pejorative as well, but my childhood and my upbringing was raised without, let's say you and me work together and I'm sitting here and we're talking for 36 minutes. And during that entire 36 minutes time, what I'm trying to do is to bring our conversation around to an opportunity for me to sell Jehovah's Witnesses to you.
As a member of the church.
Yeah, so that's what I was like when I was a Jehovah's Witness. So, and that was how I was raised throughout my entire life. And even now, and this is the thing, if you're listening to this and you have a Jehovah's Witness friend, or you have a Jehovah's Witness person in work and you think, oh, that person's so nice, they always stop and talk to me. They stop and talk to you because Jehovah's Witnesses are obliged to count the time that they talk to people about the truth, as they call it. Okay?
That's what they call the whole shebang, right?
Whole shebang. The whole thing is called the truth. That's the sort of inside name, but they have to count that time. So whilst they're counting that time, they're counting the time they're speaking to you. So if I was a Jehovah's Witness now, I'd be going, 37 minutes, Matt. That's going to go on my report card, because we keep.
Does it really? Is it something that you would write down?
Yeah,
and
you have to write your report card, and if you don't fill in your report card, you get in trouble.
Wow, that's interesting, because I know in the very small amount of research I did see something about how there's a lot of training in public speaking just to get everybody amped up to convert all these people. Yeah,
well, that's I'm going to say this is one of the few positives the Jehovah's Witnesses have. Now, this is not to say you couldn't learn this from listening to a couple of TED Talks online. So sure. I'm not going to suggest that, that it's any reason to stay or any reason to join, but you'll find that a lot of Jehovah's Witnesses, ones who've left, ones who are still in, are involved, either run their own business or are involved in sales. And I've always found that to be the case anyway, and it's certainly been the case with me.
Sure. You mentioned you own your own business. You don't have to go into detail, but is it a sales type thing?
Well, I mean, I think anybody who's self-employed has to has to have a sales mind.
That's very true.
Yeah, but previous to that, I worked in jobs that were just straight up sales, knocking doors, and just like the Jehovah's Witness, knocking doors and selling stuff. But this is the thing, because the Jehovah's Witnesses have these meetings. One of the meetings is called the Theocratic Ministry School, and if you've been to church, I'm not sure, you're a godless lot in New York, aren't you? So
no, I haven't been to church recently.
Okay,
Jehovah would be disappointed.
Well, that's okay. I'm sure I'll let them know you're okay with it. But
I also masturbate frequently.
Well, there you go. Now you're in trouble, because that's a big thing for you.
It's a no-go. You can't do it.
You're in trouble. But anyway, if you go into a normal church service, in inverted commas, you would have, a talk, some singing, some more singing, a couple of prayers in between, and you'd all go home after chatting.
Wow.
That's church. But if you go to a Jehovah's Witness church, Sunday is a very long talk with you being perfectly silent. Then it's a song. Then it's an article it's a magazine from the Watchtower where you read paragraph by paragraph and answer questions. And the questions are like, pardon me, it's like brainwashing in a sense, in that the answer's in the question, so you're basically, just repeating it. Or if you're a bit of a fancy pants, you'll maybe put your own words to the same meaning. But then the Thursday night is special. Thursday night is sales night.
Oh.
Sales night is the theocratic ministry school, whereby when I was 6 years old, I was up on the platform giving my first talk. And there I was in my little 6-year-old suit. And, and I'd be reading the Bible in front of 100 people and doing a little talk before and after it.
So you got pretty used to it pretty quick.
You get very used to it. You get very used to talking, and nerves don't become a problem. And not only that, but then they have a book called the Reasoning from the Scriptures book, which, although it's Bible themed, the actual system that they use, it turning no's into yeses, it's a sales meeting, and that's not to be critical of the Jehovah's Witnesses, and genuinely not. That's just what it is. It's you having a sales meeting about about how to get people to go from, hey, you get off my door before I shoot you, to, wow, yeah, I'd love to learn more about Jehovah.
Oh wow, well that's a tough sale.
Yeah, but once you've learned those techniques, they're going to work just as well whether you're selling the Bible, or whether you're selling paper, or whether you're selling a car. It's exactly the same technique,
Man.
And
yeah.
That's why you find a lot of people from Jehovah's Witnesses tend to gravitate towards sales and stuff.
Well, what do you have as far as, I guess, it's hard for me to imagine a childhood like yours. I'm sure it couldn't have possibly been all bad. Do you have any really, really great, memories of the church specifically? I'm sure, there's good memories of, your mom and dad being nice, but is there anything that the church specifically brought you that was joyful?
I wouldn't say, what I would say to that is, if you were to go to the worst prison in South America right now, where, it's 100 guys in one room the size of the toilet.
Yeah, that sounds terrible.
I would say at one point during the day, right, somebody said something and they all laugh, right? But that's not to say that the experience in that South American prison is not horrendous. So yes, there was times when we laughed, and there was times when we had pleasant experiences, but none of them were ones that you couldn't have achieved outside the church in a far easier way. And none of them were not ones that, when you look back on it with open eyes, you can't think to yourself, wow, that sucked.
Wow, that's too bad.
Yeah, so you look back and you think, okay, what was our big thing? We couldn't celebrate Christmas, we couldn't celebrate birthdays, Halloween was out,
But one time Joey farted and it was hilarious.
Exactly. The prom's a big thing for you guys in America. You can't do that.
The prom?
Yeah.
No, that was fun.
Yeah, well, you can't do your prom. That doesn't bother me so much, but you can't do your prom. Loads of things that you can't do. You can't do the Boy Scouts. If you like the Boy Scouts, you can't do it.
No.
And these are all things that, and so maybe my memory is, I have a good memory once when I went to a Jehovah's Witness assembly, which is a big gathering where we all get together and we have exactly the same experience as a Jehovah's Witness meeting, but it's with 5,000 people. But, I have a good experience of how we rented boats at one point and we all went out. But now I'm thinking to myself, well, yeah, I rented boats, but I could have, really done a lot of that if I'd have joined the Boy Scouts.
Yeah, it's true. And
you had good experiences, but nothing that couldn't be duplicated by, living in the world and doing worldly things.
Worldly things.
Yeah, well, that's the word. That's the ultimate insult. Anything you're doing, it's a bit worldly.
It's kind of like it's like a cheeky way to say you're a sheep.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, sheep and goats, Jehovah's Witnesses pride themselves in being sheep.
Oh.
Yeah. So
they're part of the flock.
Yes, I'm a goat.
Okay, I see.
Inside the flock, I'm a goat.
Oh, okay.
Consequently, since I've left, they've been getting even worse. They call us, what do they call us? Mentally diseased apostates and people with gangrenous teachings.
Oh boy.
And the truth is, in a way, we are a bit like gangrene because truth spreads really quickly. So it's like, sometimes you see some terrible, in America, you've had some of those terrible police shootings, and then there's a video of it, and it goes,
Sure.
It goes overnight. It's all around the world.
Yes.
And the truth is like that, So if I come to you and I say, hey, by the way, that religion we're all in, it's rubbish, and here's why, and then everyone goes, my God, something we really care about, and it starts to spread. So yeah, in a way, it's like gangrene, but it's good, because it's reality. holiday. You know, it's
Well, that brings up a pretty interesting question. What you, as somebody on the forefront of, I would assume, it seems to me with your channel and things, maybe not. You're a family man, you got things to do, and you seem very well rooted in the here and now and enjoying that. But it seems like you also spend some time, trying to spread your new version of the truth, which is whatever. But
yeah.
How do you see technology and that quick spreading of information hindering or affecting the church in the future? Do you think there'll be a time where eventually it just will be impossible to make new recruits?
I think in English-speaking countries that's becoming the case now. There's very little growth in English-speaking countries. That's why the Jehovah's Witnesses have a policy now. I understand that where they're really moving into foreign language, particularly Spanish language, because they know that Spanish is a big culture of family. In Spanish communities, and once you get a family, you've got them. You've got the whole family for life. Whereas, in the West, in English-speaking countries, it's families are a little bit more disparate, and you can get rid of them. As far as the internet, you can break them up. As far as the internet's concerned, I think it's brilliant. I mean, it got me out of it. So,
really, is that what? Yeah, that's right. You were telling me you on the old 56K modem, and
yeah, exactly. Long live the internet. It literally saved another 15 years wasted in my life.
It's the opposite for me. I think I've probably wasted 15 years of my life on the internet.
But you wasted it in a good way. I mean,
a really good way.
Porn is really not as bad, Witness,
Is it really?
It's really not nearly as bad. No, it's not nearly as bad.
As they made it sound?
Oh, no, definitely. I mean, the Jehovah's Witnesses made everything sound bad.
So what was your, if this is not too prying, what was your first pornographic experience outside of the church?
Well, geez, I don't know. It would have been one of those really slow to download naked ladies. You know the one?
Of course. No, I remember the type. You got to wait a minute.
You were like, wait, hang on a second. I can see the top of a boob. Listen, I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to go downstairs. I'm going to make a cup of tea. And when I come upstairs, I might see the belly button.
Yeah, that's what it's all about.
Oh, I'm telling you. Anyway, no, that was... but no, that's the thing. It's my... You were saying earlier about my version of the truth. I would say I don't have a truth. I have a truth for me. And I do videos online, and what I try to say, and most of them anyway, is I honestly don't care what you believe if you leave. As long as you leave, I don't even care if you come back. All I care about is that the Jehovah's Witnesses have two huge problems, right? And they have one problem, which is shunning, right? So if you leave, if I've left, and everybody that I used to call brother and sister, pardon me, all the guys I used to go to, I used to hang out with instead of having friends in school, they all shun me.
Wow.
A friend of mine, a guy died recently. Doesn't matter. His name was Ronnie, and we call him Uncle Ronnie because he wasn't relative, but he was that close to us. Our families went on holiday together. We went camping together. We went to the assemblies together. We were real close.
Sure, people have those.
He had two boys. They were the same age as me and my brother. They were like brothers. And he died recently. No one told us about the funeral until the day it was over. And it was in Dublin. I would have gone, even though he was a Jehovah's Witness, I'd have gone and sat through his funeral.
Would they have respected your presence had you gone to that funeral?
No.
Or would it just been like a turn the other cheek kind of thing?
Oh yeah, they would. No one would have spoken to me. But anyway,
but they wouldn't have kicked you out or anything.
No, they wouldn't have kicked me out. They might have. If they'd taken the notion, they could have. But his two sons rather, I sent them what I thought was a really nice letter. Saying, I'm so sorry. Think back on the times we spent as kids, riding our BMXs together. And, I really feel for you guys. And, you're not the only ones grieving your dad. Didn't get a reply.
Oh, yeah, they can't. You're too worldly for them.
That's it. And that's the thing. So, that's their biggest problem, shunning. If they were prevented, which is, over here in Europe, it's a breach of the European Convention on Human Rights. To say that, listen, we're going to tell one person that they need to stop speaking to you on threat of expelling them. Once you've got that solved, well, then it's just another religion with crazy beliefs. But if you can come and go from it and you can still speak to your mom and dad, it's not up to me, what you believe.
And do you have any interest in, furthering your reach in, trying to help people, I guess, maybe a harsh word, but escape the clutches of the church?
I think escape is fair because, like I say, the shunning is the big issue. A lot of Jehovah's Witnesses are keen to leave. A lot of Jehovah's Witnesses know it's rubbish. But, if you've got a wife who believes it wholeheartedly, and if your situation is, hey, listen, if I leave, we're done, She's going to divorce me. The kids are going to leave, or she might not divorce me, but she'll certainly leave me, because the Jehovah's Witnesses aren't big on divorce. But she'll leave me. She'll bring the kids. My relationship is done. Well, you're stuck in there. But I mean, if they get rid of shunning, again, it's just an odd little religion, And so yeah, I'll keep helping people and telling people what I know about Jehovah's Witnesses. There's lots of other people who do it better than me, but I try to do it too.
Well, let's get your website in there one more time. What was it for your YouTube videos? What's the channel called?
The Great Apostate.
The Great Apostate.
Yeah, there's other guys. There's a guy called John Cedars. There's also J.W. Struggle, who I just love. Both of whom are very good, and they sort of they teach you more. But if you're interested, go and rock on my videos and tell me what you think. The other thing I wanted to mention. Do we have much more time?
Sure. Yeah, as much as you want.
Oh, cool. The other thing I wanted to mention is the biggest problem. I mean, the shunning is horrible, but there are two linked problems. Is the Jehovah's Witnesses have a problem with sexual abuse within their congregations. It's a huge issue.
And is this mostly, I would assume, like in the pedophilic kind of nature?
Yeah, it's pedophilia, and the problem is really it's a big problem. And it stems from the Jehovah's Witnesses have a very bad understanding of how the Bible says you should deal with disputes. So I don't want to get into that part too deeply, but I'll explain it really quickly. So let's say I sold you something which broke down and you think I owe you some money, okay?
All right.
According to their understanding, Matt, you have to come to me and say, hey, Neve, I think maybe you cheated me a little bit here. I want my money back, right? And then once I refuse, then you can go back to the Kingdom Hall elders. Notice I say the elders, not the outside authorities. You can go to the elders only, and then they'll help you deal with it. Their word is law, and that's the end of the issue.
Yeah, I would assume if you go to the cops, that's probably frowned upon.
Well, it's not only frowned upon, it's disfellowshipping matter.
Oh, wow, really? So even if it was like, let's say, something way more serious in nature, which is, I think, what we're talking about here.
This has happened several times. I would urge anybody who's listening to this, if they go online and type in Candace Conte, they will find the current case that's going on through the California courts of a woman who was sexually abused by an elder, I believe it was. This has happened time and time again. She is certainly not unique. The Jehovah's Witnesses threatened her and her family with disfellowshipping. They hid the pedophile. They supported the pedophile because he was an elder. It is, and that's been done time and time again. Basically, the Jehovah's Witnesses have a rule which says you need to have 2 witnesses to a crime before they'll accept it, okay? So I can give you an example over here in the UK. A young girl, about 12 years old, was seriously sexually assaulted by a Jehovah's Witness elder over a number of years. She went to the Jehovah's Witnesses with her dad, the elders with her dad. They gave a letter stating her allegations to the elder. He looked at it, laughed, threw it at them, told them to clear off. The other elders, who were all friends of his, bear in mind, in the same congregation, knew him for years, said, well, we're not going to do anything about that because we don't have any witnesses. And her being a witness was not enough. Now, as you're probably aware, not many pedophiles bring their friends with them.
No, I mean, I don't know any, but I would assume they probably don't.
Yeah, it's a very private crime. It's like beating up your wife. You don't say, hey guys, you should see the black eye I gave her. If you do, your friend should beat you up. But
sure,
this is the thing. So this girl doesn't have the witnesses, and this is a case that's been repeated thousands of times within the Jehovah's Witnesses. She doesn't have the 2 witnesses, so the Jehovah's Witnesses say, listen, not only can you not go forward with this to the police, because if you do, you'll be disfellowshipped. Your family will be disfellowshipped if they support you, right? And if they won't support you, they'll be told to kick you out of the house, okay? But we also will not be investigating this matter any further. And this is the kicker. They'll then show her scriptures in the Bible about how it's wrong to gossip within the Christian congregation. And by gossip, they mean never talk about this again. And don't blacken this wonderful man's name, even though he might be giving talks about Jesus Christ to you at the next meeting.
I'm surprised that nobody, I mean, I guess, yeah, once you're like locked up in those views, you're like, oh, disfellowship. But to me, of course, sounds like nothing. But to them, I guess is like basically death. But still, if that was,
it's huge.
If I'm surprised nobody's been killed over this, because I mean, that's the very first thing I would do. Oh, he did what to you? Okay, hold on. Let me just get in my car and go kill this man. I'll be right back.
For a while, yeah, I agree. But when you're in this cult, because I used to be really offended by people calling it a cult when I was in it. But I mean, yeah, it's a cult. Let's be honest. When you're in this cult, your attitude is, well, we have to go to the elders about everything. It's not for me to deal with this. I have to go to the elders, and if the elders say I can't go to the police, well, that's what God says.
Are there is there any light at the end of this tunnel? Like, is there anybody who has gone to the police and just stuck up a middle finger and then won?
Candace Conti, she's the woman I told you about earlier. She went to the police. I don't know a great deal about the story, but I know some. And she went to the police, and she actually got the police. I think she got disfellowshipped over. I know it's happened over here in Wales, especially in just beside England. It happened over there. It's happened thousands of times that people have gone on and said, "No, not going to happen," and gone to the police. And pardon me, the Jehovah's Witnesses are starting to be forced to change their policies. There was an incident recently in Australia where they're having a royal commission in Australia on the instances of child abuse within different organizations. They spent about 2 weeks dealing with the Jehovah's Witnesses, where they discovered that during the 50-odd years that they looked into, the Jehovah's Witnesses refused to report 1,006 pedophiles within the church.
Oh, that's a lot of pedophiles for 50 years.
Yeah. And that's not one person they're abusing. So you're probably talking at maybe 5,000 or 6,000 abused children that were denied justice. That just looking at statistics, some of those people will have killed themselves.
Yeah, I'm sure they have. That makes you sick. That's insane.
And that's Australia with about 15,000 Jehovah's Witnesses in it. Okay. So America has about 150,000 Jehovah's Witnesses in it. How many people have been denied? How many American girls and women have been denied justice because of those rules in America?
Or for that matter, probably little boys too. Let's be honest.
It was unfair of me. Yeah, thousands of young boys.
I mean, if you're holed up in that, what's it called here? The big one in Brooklyn.
Oh, the Bethel in New York. Yeah.
There's that's basically just a big men's quarters, and I would imagine that there's a lot of
Yeah, I mean, certainly I've heard stories about rapes, about homosexual rape that's gone on in there. I've heard all manner of stories up there. I personally wouldn't make a big deal of it because I'm too ignorant of it to back up my claims. But there are stories online where people who've been there have said, yeah, this has happened.
I would imagine it's a big building full of sexually oppressed men.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that's going to happen.
Absolutely. And the thing is, pedophilia and sexual abuse and power trips of all kinds will happen in any organization that thinks too highly of itself and is not regulated independently. I
wonder what that is. I wonder what the link is between super high power and kids and touching that. I wonder what that link is there, because it always comes up. Even with the Catholic Church, no big powerful organization is completely clean of this despicable act.
No, you're quite right. And so I don't judge them. I don't judge the Jehovah's Witnesses, and say, oh well, this is just, you guys are just specifically bad. But what I do say is that Jehovah's Witnesses, they did that court case, the Queen's Commission into child abuse in Australia. Pardon me, and they made certain pieces of evidence out, and they said things like, "Oh well, we do not force parents to not go to the police. Right? We do not tell people that they are not allowed to go to the police."
But they do.
Oh, they do. They do, definitely. I mean, I can tell you, even in a very small case, back when I was about 16, my brother he bought something off another Jehovah's Witness. It turned out it was rubbish. It was broken, and the guy had defrauded him in all manner of ways, to the tune of about 20 years ago, about £3,000 or about $5,000. And my parents said to the elders, "Listen, we want this sorted." The elders said, "Well, do you know what? No, we're not going to help you." And my mum, who's was quite bossy for the time, she said, "Well, you know what? This is fraud. We're just going to go to the police." And the response to the elders about something as simple as fraud was, "Well, you can do that, but we're going to get you disfellowship."
And is that what did it for your parents there?
No. They were still in it for years after that, because you're in a cult.
Yeah, it happens.
It happens, and you just think, oh, maybe it's my kingdom hall. Maybe it's my kingdom hall has some bad elders, bad seeds in it. But once you go online and you start hearing the same stories time after time after time, and you go, wow, it's not just me, it's every kingdom hall, and they're all echoes of my story. And whenever I go online and I listen to, stories about former Scientologists and stuff, And I go, oh yeah, that sounds like me. Yeah, I did that. Yeah, you really worked really hard and you never got any sleep. I remember that.
Well, a lot of thing that's common with a lot of these cults, and this is a question from the chat room. Andy wants to know: do Jehovah's Witness, do they seek any political power through voting, or do they have a specific political party that they back?
No, Jehovah's Witnesses are not allowed to vote. They're not allowed to take part in virtually any sort of civic roles. So if you meet a Jehovah's Witness who's who's an aberration, who's a policeman or something like that, he became a Jehovah's Witness. He didn't become a policeman because he wouldn't have been allowed to be. You're not allowed to vote. You're not allowed to to do all manner of things. And I'm very proud that I vote now. I'm often not proud of the people I vote for or how they behave, as I'm sure neither are you.
No.
But at the same time, I'm very proud that I'm allowed to vote because I can.
Yeah, I'm sure it feels a little different for you.
Yeah, but I mean, things that, I live in, as I've told you, I live in just outside Belfast.
Yeah. You guys have made some significant political progress in the last couple of years. You guys keep coming up in the news, yeah.
We have, but that's one of the things. We had what was called the Good Friday Agreement, where everyone voted for it. I didn't vote for it. I was a Jehovah's Witness.
Well, that's true. Yeah, so it's not your piece of history.
So it's not my piece of history. And when I hear people talking about, these historic occasions, and I kind of think to myself, no, not really for me. And I feel a bit ashamed of that, to be honest with you. Because whether I would have voted for it, which I would now, or against it, which I probably would have then, it wouldn't have mattered. At least I'd have taken part in democracy.
Yeah.
But I didn't because I was in a cult. Sorry about that.
Well, that's okay. I mean, you got today and on forward. I mean, it sounds like you take a pretty active role in anything, and it also sounds like you've got a really good outlook on like how it all works, and it's just part of the past. It just this could. You get in this situation, and we've already discussed, people get out of this, and maybe with even the best intentions, then they wind up, in really terrible situations or ending their own lives. But you seem to have a pretty good grasp on things.
Well, I try, and I credit a lot of it with my wife, because without her, I probably wouldn't have done it. She wasn't a Jehovah's Witness, and to her it was all just, hey, this is weird, but I love this guy and I'll stick with him. And so my wife, that's a shout to my lovely wife Linda.
Yeah, sure, definitely. Yeah, I can understand that. You got to have support really in anything you do, but especially something like that. That's pretty insane, and I'm glad she got you.
And and that's the thing and that's what's so pernicious and so wrong about the Jehovah's Witness. It's not the fact that they believe stupid stuff. I could go to the Catholic Church and go, whoa, really? You believe that turns into Jesus Christ when you put it in your mouth?
It's all.
I don't do that because I don't care. But the thing is, if I say that to a Catholic and all the other Catholics don't go, quick, shun him.
Sure, that's true. So this shunning, you keep bringing it up. It seems like that is the most offensive thing to you.
I think it's the power. It's the thing that gives you power. If you have stupid, it's like capitalism, right? It's a marketplace of ideas. So again, it's not my place. Who am I to tell you what religion to join, what political party to join? But if you told me tomorrow, do you know what? I really like who's running in America. If you said to me, I really like Hillary Clinton for running for election, I think she'd be great. But then once you decided that, you then discovered that if you ever changed your mind, everybody that you knew would shun you for the rest of your life.
Yeah, that's pretty ridiculous.
Then you can see it and you'd go, wow, maybe Hillary's a bad idea.
Yeah, it's not even the caucus yet. I gotta wait.
So that's the thing, is that from my perspective, there should be a marketplace of ideas. So you can go out and you can say, well, the Mormons, do they appeal to me? No. Maybe I'll give those Westboro Baptists. No, I don't think so either. But the point is, you can then go, no, it wasn't for me, I left, but I still got to speak to my kids. Isn't that nice? Because right now what you have is people who are leaving in their 50s, 60s, 70s, and their children, their grandchildren are saying, well, we love you, but we'll never speak to you again. Bye.
Oh, man, that's just sad. And I know a lot of these types of organizations, a lot of cults, they're very infamous for splitting up families.
Sorry, I'm drinking Diet Coke while you're talking there. Yeah, absolutely agree.
Are you sure you're not drinking Kool-Aid?
No, not anymore, thankfully.
Yeah.
But no, that's the thing. And like I say, if we can do something about the shunning, well, then it's just a silly little religion that started from a crazy guy called Charles Taze Russell, And so what? There's plenty of silly religions that started from crazy guys. You know?
That's very true. As a matter of fact, I mean, that's pretty much how religions start. Just some crazy guy. And then everybody's like, yeah, he was kind of right about most things. I like his philosophy. And then everybody is either cool or not.
Yeah, I mean, somebody said something. Sorry, it wasn't somebody. It was Christopher Hitchens, actually. I listened to him, or was it Richard Dawkins? Sorry. Richard Dawkins did a thing on YouTube, which I saw recently. And he was talking about the founder of the three great faiths, Abraham. And he said, the parental values of Abraham were that he thought it was okay to take his only son on top of a mountain and sacrifice him.
No, let's do what that guy did.
Yeah, let's take it. Yeah, he's the guy I want to follow in my life. Yeah, Abraham sounds awesome. You know, and crazy people find religions, unfortunately. And Charles Taze Russell, he was the founder of the Jehovah's Witnesses. He had some of the craziest beliefs. He wrote in his books that because he believed in this new system, that women were like a subspecies of men. They were lesser than. So he believed that at some point that women would just spontaneously start to grow penises.
What?
Yeah, he did. Honestly, Google it. It's true. He believed,
that's pretty weird.
He did. He believed, and this is for all the African Americans out there. He believed that black people would slowly turn white. Yeah.
I think I've heard that one before. I think do Mormons believe that too, or am I just totally wrong?
I think they had some real problems with black people too, but yeah. I'm not sure if it was that particular problem, but they did have a problem. What was the other one? Oh yeah, the guy's buried under a pyramid. Because most of his dates that he got for his numerology, his belief that 1914 was an important pivotal date in his human history, he got by actually measuring the Pyramid of Giza.
Huh.
But then you see, whenever this came out and people started going, hey, you know what? That sounds crazy as shit, man. Then they started changing it and saying, oh, no, he got it all from the Bible, honestly. And
so really the entire foundational structure that the religion's based on is not even there anymore.
Hokum.
Wow.
Yeah, it's nonsense. But if you were to say this to a Jehovah's Witness, or if there's one still listening, good for you. He's listening to me now and he's going, what? That is bullshit. You are lying. Of course, because their books don't tell you that. They have a system of. I'm sorry, I've been talking to you for ages, but this is very brilliant. They have a system of what they call old light and new light. So, books which are like past 30 years old, or what's called old light, and you're really not supposed to read them anymore, which is very convenient because they're usually full of shit.
Right.
So some of the old light that I remember growing up with was about masturbation, which was you've got to be really careful with masturbation because it will turn you gay.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah.
If that's true, then I'm gay as shit.
yeah, definitely. I'm not even sure how I produced 2 children. I'm so gay. But
yeah.
But that's old light. So they move on. They might still think that about masturbation. I'm not too sure. But that's the idea. So when a modern day Jehovah's Witness is not looking at his history and going, wow, yeah, Charles Taze Russell was a nutter, but, and then trying to justify it, because they don't even know anything about him other than maybe his name, if they're lucky.
Because it's all in these old light books, right?
Old light books, which you're supposed to read.
Man. But they just say, don't worry about these. These are more like decoration now. These new ones are more right. Listen to this.
Yes, because that's new light. And the thing, if you get fussy about the old light, you know what's going to happen to you? You're going to get disfellowshipped.
Who do they say wrote these new ones, or do they just say they're reinterpretations?
No. Well, the books are just basically random books. I mean, it could be it could be any. They just publish them themselves, so they don't claim that they're uniquely inspired. They just write books from what they call the writing committee of Brooklyn. So probably about 8 or 9 guys, and they just sit around the room going, "Whoa, what do we write about this time? I don't know, masturbation. Okay."
Wow, man, that's the whole thing is just incredible, and I implore anybody listening to check out the YouTube channel, check out Neil's YouTube channel, and also if you need more information, I'm sure it's out there for you. If you're already on the internet, keep looking into it. Definitely, find the answers you need. The world's not what it seems, man.
Yeah.
I think it was just fantastic talking to you. Definitely a pleasure. And I'm so glad that you seem like such a normal guy. And
Thank you very much.
I'm glad that you got your family going for you, and that, you're not in a cult, and you can just go out and have a nice cold beer and enjoy your family and your wife. And that's great. And I hope you keep doing it, and I hope the best for you, man.
Thank you very much, man. I appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem. And if there's any links you want in the show notes or anything like that, send them my way, and we'll get some more info out there for you.
Thank you very much. That's marvelous.
No problem. Thank you so much for talking to me. It was super informative. I feel like an expert now, and it's definitely something I think more people should know about.
Oh, listen, no bother. Thank you so much, Matt.
So there you go. A guy that was in a cult, and now he is not. He seems like he's doing good. I hope the best for him, like I said. If you want to check more Showcaine out, you can do so at iTunes, probably the best place to do it nowadays. Or if you want to check it out at youtube.com/Showcaine. Or for all things Showcaine and never miss anything, you can check us out at showcaine.com. That's always fun. And then there's a little group that we have on Facebook that's not as active as I'd like it to be. So if you'd like to help, you can do that. Just search for us on Facebook or the Only Showcaine group. All right. That was just a great conversation. I sure hope that if anybody somehow, if there's somebody who's still in hey, by the way, just learned that this was slang. In America, Jehovah's Witnesses, the cooler ones, call themselves J-dubs. J-dubs. Oh, man. So, if there are any J-dubs listening, I hope that you got some good information, and I hope that you don't think that the world is just this big, fucked up place that's trying to kill you. Well, I guess it is. But the thing, it's not in the way that your organization is trying to tell you that it is, and hopefully you got some good information out of this. And I think, if anything, hopefully just to think critically and, maybe always second guess your surroundings and the people in charge. The minute you stop questioning the people in charge of you, you've basically just given up. So I hope the best for you if you're listening, and please, by any means, don't take all your information from this show. Keep the pursuit of knowledge going. Learn more every day. And that's it for me then on the 81st episode of Showcaine. I guess I will see you in the funny papers.